Warriors versus Timberwolves. Who's gonna win? This is gonna be a fun matchup, and I have Warriors in 6. I see a world where it's 5, and I'll explain why, but I have the Warriors winning this series. If you watch this page, you know I picked the Warriors to go to the finals, so it should not be a surprise that I'm picking them to win this series. Let's start with the Steph Curry factor. Unlike the last series, Steph Curry is actually going to go off more. And I know you're thinking Minnesota is a great defensive team, as I have highlighted previously, especially in the Lakers series, which was one of the big reasons I thought they would beat the Lakers. But this matchup actually favors Steph Curry more than the matchup with Houston. It's just the type of players that the Timberwolves have. Again, great defensive team, but Steph Curry, I believe, averages 29 against the Timberwolves. And you don't want Anthony Edwards, for example, chasing around Steph Curry because he will not have any legs in order to, shoot the ball and do all the other things he needs to do. So obviously you are not going to have Ant-Man on him, and there are only so many defenders they have who can guard Steph Curry. That's one element. The other thing is Jimmy Butler and Minnesota. Now, I don't know how much of a factor this will be in the series, but I have to put it in there because it might be. If you remember, if you don't, the whole Jimmy Butler Minnesota breakup was not amicable, to say the least. We've heard the Jeff Teague story about him saying, pay me, the whole practice story. Just look up the Jeff Teague, Jimmy Butler practice story. So there is not exactly happiness between Jimmy and Minnesota. And so I don't think anybody who was on that roster is still on the team, but the organization themselves, obviously, it's still Minnesota. So Jimmy is also going to be healthier this series. Obviously, he's healing from his injury, so that is another thing. I do expect him to be more aggressive and to score a bit more because he was, it was hard for him to run sometimes last series. So as the days go on, I expect him to be healthier. And so that is one thing. But also, again, he is someone where you do not want to, get him going, so to speak. Here's the thing that I have mentioned in videos about the Warriors recently, but nobody has really talked about the fact that we know Minnesota is a good defensive team, and we knew Houston was a good defensive team. But do you know that since they got Jimmy Butler, they have been the #1 defensive team? Not the Minnesota Timberwolves, not the Houston Rockets, not even OKC. It has been the Warriors. And so, for me, Minnesota's defense was clearly better than the Lakers' defense, by far, in my opinion. So I didn't think it was really close there. And so, regardless, Minnesota's defense was going to outplay them, right? The Warriors, again, have the #1 defense since Jimmy Butler got there. Now, are they going to have the #1 defense in this series? I mean, it's going to be good defense versus good defense. But what I'm saying is Minnesota is not going to outplay them on defense. So one of the advantages that Minnesota had over the Lakers is not happening here, right? So that's a wash. And then when we go offensively, like I said, Steph Curry averages like 30 against the Timberwolves. And I think obviously Anthony Edwards is going to do his thing. The X factor for Minnesota is Naz Reid. Naz Reid seems like he gets 30 every time he plays the Warriors. I don't know if that's actually accurate, but it seems like every time Naz Reid plays the Warriors, he lights it up. And so that obviously is a tough cover for the Warriors because he can shoot the 3 and make 6 of them. And then if he's dropping 30, that's a big help to Anthony Edwards. And so I do think the Warriors are going to make a conscious effort to make sure that he does not go off, especially knowing what he has done to them in the past. So that's one thing. But I just think in general, while Minnesota definitely has more experience, I'll also talk about the Rudy Gobert factor in a minute. The Warriors execute, and Minnesota has been much, and I mean much, better at executing down the stretch this year, especially we saw it in the playoffs against the Lakers. But I still don't think they will out-execute. Just like I said about the Cavs-Pacers series, which was going to be more of a high-scoring, game or games as opposed to some other series, I expect there to be not necessarily 130, although maybe, but like higher scores definitely than Warriors versus Rockets, right? Here's the thing, Rudy Gobert, I was praising him up and down in the Lakers series. I said before the series started, he will not get played off the floor because the Lakers had no big to guard him. And they were not great defensively, and just the way that the Lakers played allowed Rudy Gobert to be able to stay on the floor, even when he got switched on to Luka. He did a very good job staying in front of him and doing the best he could. Like, he did what he was supposed to do. And I said he would not get played off the floor in that series, and he did not. Well, unfortunately, Rudy, I that might change in this series. Because switching on to Steph Curry is just, a disaster waiting to happen, right? And nobody expects Rudy to be able to guard Steph. That's not what I mean. But the Warriors have the ability, unlike the Lakers, and I'm not trying to keep comparing them to the Lakers, but just to show you why it was different in that series versus this one, to play small ball and still be a top tier defensive team, right? The Lakers couldn't have no big and still play top tier defense. So what I mean by that is Draymond Green and Jimmy Butler are anchoring their defense. Draymond Green is like 6'5", and he literally guards people 5, 6, 7 inches taller than him and does a great job at it. Like, he just knows how to guard people. And so the size advantage is not going to be as helpful, I guess, if that's the right word, to Minnesota as it was in the Lakers series. Now, again, Naz Reid is someone who the Warriors are going to have to look out for because he has size, strength, he can play some defense, and like I said, always seems to score like 30 on the Warriors. So again, he is someone who they can play their kind of small ball with and then definitely match up a bit better with the Warriors. But I do think, unfortunately for Rudy, this is not the series for him. I think the Warriors are going to come in laser focused, and I think Steph, again, because that whole series he was guarded by 5 defenders at all time, he is going to go off this series, and he is waiting to go off. Believe me, he is not happy about not being able to get the shots up that he wants.